Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Leslie Smith. I am the owner of Usawa Wellness Services here in San Antonio, Texas. And today we are joined by Jonassy Alexander and Kiki Roshan, who will be speaking with us in regards to understanding the five love languages. Kiki Roshan is a graduate counseling intern here at Usawa, and Jonassy Alexander is a licensed master's social worker here at Usawa as well. Welcome, ladies. How are you all?
Hi, doing well. Doing well. Happy Friday,
Awesome.
everyone.
Hi,
Happy
everybody.
Friday.
Nice to
Yes.
be here.
All right. I think I'm hoping that this will be a very interactive conversation in regards to the love languages to provide a basic understanding of what the love languages are, as well as some practical applications, and not just romantic relationships, but also parent and child relationships, as well as any other interpersonal relationships, whether they be at work or church or just any kind of environment, school maybe, just any other kind of environment where you are engaging with someone else. I think the love languages can be definitely helpful. Would you ladies agree?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I'll start with you ladies and just ask you, what's your basic understanding of the five love languages, or how was the five love languages introduced to you?
So I'll start with my just like overall, the five love languages. They come from Gary Chapman. I have my handy dandy little book, and I go through it with my little tabs, right? So it comes from Gary Chapman. He's a biblical pastor, and he did research into looking at how the different couples he was counseling, how they interacted with each other and the ways they were showing love, and he developed these five love languages. I always like to explain them through tacos, because that's like the simplest version, right? Words of affirmation. Your tacos are delicious. Acts of service. I made you tacos. Receiving gifts is here is a taco. Quality time. Let's go out for tacos together. And then physical touch. Let me hold you like a taco.
I love it.
And so that is that's a basic bare understanding of the five love languages, right? How I got introduced to it was from a marriage retreat that I went on at the very, very beginning stages of my marriage. And that's how I was first introduced to what the five love languages were.
I so
Okay,
love
so
that
he,
analogy. Thank you,
I know she beat
Jonathan.
me to it. I was about to say my coffee analogy, Jonassy.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, for my journey through the love languages, excuse me, was because of my son. He started sixth grade, and woo, child, did he put me through some interesting challenges. So I'm like, how do I deal with this child of mine? And so I saw the love languages for teenagers, and I said, okay, let me try this. And so I asked him to take the quiz. His love language was quality time. And it made so much sense because he was always, Mom, you want to do this? Mom, you want to do this? Mom, let's go here. And so I started developing time with him through that, learning his love language. And so I would take him to lunch, then just spending that quality time with him. Anything he wanted to do, I just made sure I was made myself more available. Because what I know now is back then he was vying for my attention. He wanted my attention, and we have five other children, so we were kind of time constraints. So I just made sure to be purposeful in my time with my son. And so since that was a big hit, I'm like, you know what? Let me try this in my marriage. Let me see what's going on here. And so we took the test. Me and my husband love testing all kind of quizzes. So we took it. And his love language is physical touch. And mine is acts of service. Not to say I don't like the other ones, but rotate my tires, fill up my gas tank, bring me coffee in the morning, right? That's what I wanted. So that's what I love. And so we're purposeful in those things. And his love language is physical touch. Just a simple touch, holding hand, rub on the head. And we're so automatic with it now. If I grab his hand, he goes, I love you too. He knows I'm expressing my love for him by saying, I love you, by just touching his head. Or him bringing me coffee. Instead of saying, I love you for bringing me coffee, I'm like, I love you too, because I know him bringing me coffee was like, I love you. And my receiving it was like, thank you. So it's helped me in all aspects of my relationships with my kids, my friends, family, even my coworkers. I try to find out what their interests are, and try to. I think that builds our relationship and our bond stronger if you can identify what people need in a relationship.
Absolutely. Um, so let me ask you guys this: do you think that the concept of love languages is universally applicable, or do you think there's like some cultural or contextual differences within the five love languages?
So I think that yes, like it could be universally applicable, but it would be remiss if I didn't mention like the cultural aspects of it, because again, the concept of it is it comes from an American Baptist pastor, so it comes from a Christian based Western perspective, and that might not, or likely it doesn't include or take into context other cultural norms in other cultures.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be very common in your culture to receive or accept gifts, for example, in a certain way. And because you were brought up in that culture, that might affect either that person's ability to provide or show love in one way or accept love in a different way, because their culture says that receiving gifts is showing love or not showing love. Um,
Or
so
not,
that's
right?
how I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Johnson, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because as a teacher, when I taught in middle school, we had a lot of Middle Eastern students come in, and they would bring gifts, food, and everything. And so, yeah, so their protocol, if I would say no, thank you, or I can't accept that, that would have been very detrimental to our relationship. And so you're right about saying that you do have to take in account of cultural aspects when you're dealing with this.
Absolutely. If I were
Mm-hmm.
to tell my grandmother, no, I don't want food,
Hmm.
she'd just
Oh.
be being rude. Like, here, I'm, you can eat this food, sit
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
So, and that's just, my culture or our culture, um, that let me do this for you, let me fix your plate, things like that are ways, um, that you might show love. But for somebody else's culture, that might not be the case. So, there is some context that you want to add to that as well.
You're right, and you're absolutely right about that. I remember when I was in college, I was invited to dinner with an Indian family, and part of me, they accepted me into their family. I started going over more, and so they allowed me to make tea. Now, if you know anything about Indian culture, having them fix you tea in their home is an honor, and so that was an act of service. And so that was very special to them that I learned how to make tea the way they did and serve it the way they did. So yeah, culture aspects definitely I think should be considered when dealing with the five love languages.
Yeah. So when you guys, I know you spoke of your love language possibly now, but have you seen it change over time, or have you seen the other person in the relationship's love language change over time?
I would say so. So for me, I don't remember exactly to the T, but I know physical touch was not my top love language when I first did it,
Mm-hmm.
however many years ago, and that's my business. Um, but it wasn't physical touch, and now it's physical touch. That is my top love language. And it so for me, it's definitely changed over time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think if you would ask my husband, he would say his has changed as well.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
For me, yeah, definitely it's changed. Because I remember as a kid, my dad always tell me it's always better to receive than to give than to receive. And I'm like, whatever. But now as an adult, I'm like, I can totally see that now. And so at first, mine was receiving gifts. I wanted gifts because I see my dad will always give my mom gifts, so I wanted the same relationship. But as I got older, like, okay, you can get so many flowers, you can get so much candy and jewelry, and so I like that. So
Mm-hmm.
thinking about me every day, bringing me coffee, which I love to get me up in the morning, a cup of coffee. Just hey, honey, I warmed your car up. Those things mean more to me than any present can mean. But back then, yes, I was all about receiving gifts.
Mm-hmm.
But as I've grown and become a mom and been married for 17 years, it's definitely changed.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. How
Mhm.
do you think understanding your partner's love language can help your relationship though? Like you guys are talking about your marriages. How did you learn about your partner's relationship, or how can one learn about their partner's relationship, and why does it matter? How can that help the relationship?
I think knowing your partner's love language and your partner knowing your love language can really help your relationship tremendously. Now, is the research on the fence depending on what you see out there? Yes. Um, but I think there's something to any research when you look at marital therapy and marriage counseling and family relationship counseling, right? We're looking at how can I meet this person's needs, right? And that's what the love
Mm-hmm.
language talk comes back to is this person is saying, they, like Kiki said, I don't want gifts anymore. I want you to do things for me, acts of service. And if you're blatantly ignoring that need, then you're not helping the relationship thrive and prosper because you're saying your need isn't important to me, or at least that's how your partner's going to receive it. Your need isn't important to me, so I'm going to do what I want to do. And it's important to look at that.
Mhm. I totally agree with you on that, John C. I'm just thinking about my marriage in the early years when we first got married. I would like to do things for him and, do, hey, honey, let me do this for you. And he was like, okay, whatever. I didn't, at first I was like, okay, you don't appreciate all the things I'm doing, but I didn't know his love language. It didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
As long as I touched his hand, cuddled with him, put my foot on him, anything, touch his hair, rub his hair. That was what motivated him. And that's what he prefers. Even now, we talk about the kids are like, okay. And my son, he makes a joke about it. Dad, I know your love language is physical touch, but I'm not. That's, he'll say stuff like that, being funny because we big about the five love languages. Dad, I know the love language is physical touch, but I'm gonna get you a gift. Okay, I'll do something for you. But that's what he values more than anything. A hug from the kids, hug from me, a touch or a hug. He's very affectionate. And I had to learn how to do those things because I was never very affectionate. I think, John, said you mentioned that before, that physical touch wasn't yours at first. And it wasn't
Yeah.
mine either. I did not, I mean, we hug. I mean, I'm not a hugger. I mean, I hug my kids because, but I'm really not a hugger. But I become a hugger because I enjoy, the feel, the love he gets from it makes me feel good. So I become to like physical touch now. But yes, it's definitely changed through the years we've been married.
So how does one navigate in a relationship when both parties have different love languages?
I think the first thing you have to do is figure out what your love language is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You can't navigate our differences until we know individually what our love language is. And then the second part is communicating, like, hey, like she said, she thought the acts of service was good enough.
Yep.
I'm showing you love. So it takes that partner saying, actually, I receive love by somebody holding my hand or giving me hugs or whatever the case may be. um, that's the first step. You have to communicate with your partner what it is that you need from them, um, in regard to your love language, whether it's bring me a
Mm-hmm.
cup of coffee, whether it's cuddle with me at night, um, whether it's make me tacos, whatever it is in your love language that would help you see that is communicating that. And then being willing to accept that just because they receive love by physical touch and you receive love by receiving gifts, one is not better than the other or more important than the other. It's kind of like, okay, I know I don't get why you like me to pick you up this cup of coffee, but I know that you would receive my love if I did it. So let me pick you up a cup of coffee. And
Mm-hmm.
then that person in return saying, thank you so much for that cup of coffee. Here's a hug because I know physical touch is your judge. Like, so let me show my appreciation by giving you a really big hug. So I think that's how you can navigate having different love languages.
I wholeheartedly agree with that because, like I told you in the beginning, not that we struggled, but I'm like, okay, to me, he's way more affectionate than I am, so maybe I struggled. I guess I could say that I struggled with it, and like you said, I didn't really know my love language. I thought it was receiving gifts because that's what I was raised to see. That's all I saw
Mm-hmm.
around me. My dad always buy my mom gifts or people giving gifts to each other, so I'm like, okay, gifts must be a good thing. The more gifts you get, the more love you receive. But like I said, as we got the relationship, and like I said, we have 6 kids. And
Mm-hmm.
so my needs start to change. Him saying, honey, I I fold the clothes for you. I'm like, yes, I'll have to do that. That's one less thing I have to do when I get home. Just things like that. Know that he's thinking about me.
Yeah.
What would be more helpful for me, right? A gift is not gonna help that laundry get fed. I mean, get done,
Mhm.
or the kids get fed. Him doing things that lighten my load, and so
Mhm.
I can pay more attention to our family structure. That meant all the world to me. But like you said, I didn't know that until I took the test. And as I was going through the questions, I'm like, yeah, I do like that. And I'm like, wow, acts of service. I was blown away actually. I just knew it was receiving gifts. So I learned a lot about myself going through the process.
Do you think there's an opportune time to take or retake the test? When I'm hearing you guys talk, I'm like, okay, well, when would be a good time to reintroduce the test to a couple or introduce the test to a couple? What flags or, you know, concerns would you see as a therapist that would make you want to say, listen, guys, let me introduce you to Chapman's love languages?
Kiki,
I have an example. I have a couple, in fact, we were just doing this with. And I just to say I love this workbook. It just came out. I bought it. It's a couples workbook. I just bought that and I'm so excited to use it. But one of my couples, one of the man actually was the gentleman was complaining about. He's like, you know what? She doesn't get it. I just want her to sit down with me and spend some time. And she's like, well, I'm doing it. I do all these other things for you. Don't you appreciate that? It's like, I said, they need a love language test. And then actually when hers came out, she had actually it was like 20% in all of them. There was not one. She like appreciated all of them. So she was met, but his needs weren't met. His was quality time, and his second was physical touch. So she was like, "Well, I didn't know that. I thought, I did this." So they learned a lot about each other just by taking the quiz. So whenever I see conflict in a couple, I'm like, "Hey, you know what? It worked. I think it works well for my relationship, and I believe in like I said, it has such success with me. I said, well, let me see if it worked for them. And they've told me good results so far. They're like, you know what? Just by me sitting down with him watching a movie, even if I'm not watching the movie, just by me sitting close to him and I'm reading a book, he was very happy with that. And that's all he wanted. But so that's the first thing. I think some couples don't know each other. They don't know each other's love language per se. They don't know how to communicate. Even like I don't want to say telepathically. You know what I mean? You after a while, I'm sure you can say to John, you know your spouse. You just know it, what he likes. And you can develop that once you learn their love language.
Yeah, my favorite phrase for couples is a phrase that I joke a better clinician than me said you don't ever you don't ever develop the ability to read your partner's mind.
Mm-hmm.
You just get better with guessing over time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the love language helps you get better at making those, because now they're not unfounded guesses, they're educated guesses because they've educated you on how they speak.
Informed, yes.
And so now you can make a more
Mhm.
educated guess, right? I think to answer your question, Leslie, flags that I noticed in couples where I'm like, let's take a love language quiz real quick. Let's dabble in this for a little bit. Are, to Kiki's point, when you see couples that are, the phrase comes up, you don't appreciate me, or I'm feeling like I'm not appreciated, or we don't spend enough time together, those kind of phrases, or I don't feel like you love me anymore. Any of that, and it's really causing confusion between the two partners. I'm gonna be like, okay, let's look at love. Normally my question to them is, have you looked at 5 love languages? Have you looked at that at all? Because some people, most people know what it is, and some people have already done some type of quiz, or I saw it on a TikTok, so I assumed my love language was this or something like that. So I start with, how much do you know about it, and then um, do you know what your love language is? And so that's kind of where I start with couples if I'm doing love languages.
And Liz, I think you asked when we should would take it again. Was that one of the questions too? When a couple should reevaluate
Yeah,
their love language? Well, I
sure.
was I was just thinking about that. I think, and for me and my husband and I, when the kids are out and about, we're just the two of us to see if those things are still the same. Because most of my love languages kind of changed because my love language changed because I was so busy. We have 6 kids to raise. I mean, putting them through college. So I was looking for basic needs, things that I need to get myself together to
Mhm.
help the family. So it might change. Maybe I've made it develop. I want to do get showered again with gifts. But so we were thinking about taking it again
Mhm.
when our last little pup is out the nest. and I'll be like in what,
Right,
six more
because
years.
your finances
Right.
probably change, time changes.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that.
Yep.
Thank you, ladies. That's actually really helpful because I do feel that it's not talked enough about how we evolve. People think change is such a negative word, but it is evolving if you want to just kind of reframe it. And in that same, you know, circumstance, how you express love and how you receive love also changes given whatever things may come your way, whether it's uh, children leaving the home, a traumatic experience, finances, grief. Like there are so many things that impact how you show up each day that the way you express and receive love is going to change just naturally.
Yep,
Let me
exactly.
ask you, yeah, let me ask you guys this then. Um, have you ever heard of any critiques on the love languages? I know we kind of talked about it a
Yes.
little bit in the beginning because it is coming from a Western Baptist white cisgender male, right? So, have you heard any critiques in regards to what the love languages represent when you're doing work with your couples or just in general?
What?
I haven't heard of any in my work with couples, so I haven't had any
Hmm.
couples saying I don't want to do the love languages or
Hmm.
criticism from that perspective. I have seen criticism in like research perspective or from like other clinicians, um, where they feel like it's not as they feel like that either research wise the evidence isn't there to show that there's a correlation between love languages and relationship satisfaction, um,
Mm,
or clinicians saying that because it's from, like I said, a white cisgender male, it doesn't account for other communities inside the love languages.
gotcha.
The only criticism I've heard from people, like people who've used it before they actually understood it, was that, well, just because that's not my initial love language, receiving gifts, don't mean I don't want to receive any. That don't mean I never want to receive it. And I'd explain to them, it's not saying that you don't want those things too. It's saying this is what you most respond to. This is what, a favorite, if you will. Not to say that's the only thing that your spouse could do for you to express the love. Of course, I want my husband to say, hey, honey, you're doing a great job, or a little memento sometimes. But primarily, mine is active service, like I shared before. So I think some people get caught up in thinking that once you say that's your love language, you're stuck to it, that you can't ever get out of that love language.
I do definitely agree with that. And before I jump on that, Kiki, Jonathan, I want to just sit with that and ask you guys, what are your thoughts on the critiques that our profession has, in regards to love languages? Because I can definitely understand because we do know so many more things that impact relationships. But how do you guys feel about hearing some of those critiques in a tool that we use so often with couples?
I think there's some validity in the criticism of it, right? There, like we were talking earlier, there's cultural contexts that aren't a part of the five love languages. Um, there is I don't think, at least off the top of my head, feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I don't think in his first initial book he was his research included um LGBTQI plus couples in that realm. I don't think it included couples within the kink or poly community in the five love languages. Now, that's not to say there's not things that are applicable in any interpersonal relationship, which is any relationship we have with any other human being, that we can still apply to it. Right. Like Kiki was saying earlier, it's nice to get to know what your coworkers like or don't like to do, for example. And so I think while yes, there's validity in the criticism, also it's another tool, right? Like you said, Leslie, it's
Mm-hmm.
another tool. Use it where it works, and you don't use it where it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
work. Like any other tool, I'm not going to use a screwdriver to to put a nail in my wall.
Good analogy. I love it. Love it. Love
Like
it.
love
It
languages by
doesn't
itself ain't gonna help infidelity. So,
Exactly.
it's gonna take
alone.
more tools from the toolbox. Right.
Gonna
Got
take
you.
more tools. I might not even be ready yet to use the screwdriver. That's the other part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make it less tool, but I might need to do a couple more steps before I get
Mm-hmm.
ready to then use that tool. So there might be a couple other things I need to look at and explore before this one would actually be effective.
Come through,
I could.
Johnny, with the analogies. I mean,
I
I
yes.
love
know. I
it.
know.
Let me just
I
write
wrote
this.
that down. I wrote that down. I wrote that one down. And just like, and I agree with you said. Well, 100%. I totally agree with you. It's a basis. Now, would I give this to a couple who's struggling, like with domestic violence or something like that? No. That's really taught. No, this is someone who are here to like strengthen their basis, who are struggling a little bit in communication. But I would never. I mean, it's like you said, it's a tool in a toolbox, one of many, not all, not the one and be all, just a tool that you can use to enhance.
So Kiki, going back to what you were saying, is there a risk of using love languages as an excuse basically for like poor behavior? Kind of like you were saying, I didn't buy you a gift because my love language isn't gifts, it's quality time or something like that. Can you see the risk involved in that? Or what would you
I've
do
already.
with a client that comes with that? Yeah.
That's all I'm laughing because yes, I do. That's already happened. It's already happened. Because she was like, okay, we express our love languages, right? And he knows it. We went through this, and I went through. She goes, but I'm still not getting that from him. He's like, okay. And I told you the person I did, theirs was like all down. It was like basically neck and neck. And she said the person felt that
Mm-hmm.
her spouse was just using that as a basis to say, well, your love language is not receiving gifts. It was like the third one. I mean, it was actually said. I'm like, okay, let's start over. This is not. I had to go back to what the basis of it was. So yeah, I've seen already used that way. I'm like, that's not all the one and be all. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you have to not ignore the other ones because if you do the exercises within the program in the books, what it tells you is you're supposed to kind of use all of it, but kind of pay
All
more
of them.
special attention to one. And like to say, I want a Hershey
Mm-hmm.
Kisses for my husband, little cute little boxes one. If in case he's watching this, the one with the Hershey's, the big kisses. Yeah, I like that. A little gift like that, a little magnet and stuff like that. A little coffee cup. Those kind of things. I don't mean I want to ever receive a gift, but it's not my
Right.
priority per se.
Like, but if I'm hearing you correctly, like if someone's in need of their tank being filled completely or more, then you go with their primary love language.
Yes, exactly.
But like
Like,
on a day to day, it can like interchange and
yeah,
just
mix it up
showing up
some.
in
Yeah,
the
but just.
relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
And to add, when somebody says my love language is receiving gifts, and you buy them a gift, whatever you buy them the Hershey's kisses, right? You don't go here. I bought you a gift. Why you're not happy?
Yes.
That
Mm-hmm.
is not. You're not showing love at that point. You're showing manipulation.
Yeah.
It's
There
not
we
the
go.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, like I said, receiving gifts. Okay, I know my cousin loves to receive gifts, but she don't want it to be like just on the holidays, Valentine's Day. It's like random acts of kindness, just
Mhm.
just because. Or hey, I was thinking about you on a Monday or Tuesday. It don't have to be a specific holiday. That's what I like. I don't like Valentine's Day. Honestly, I really don't. Give me something just because.
Yeah, I love all
I
holidays.
like that rack. Yeah, I mean, y'all are just like, okay, I'm just writing everything down here. I'll make sure that I put that in the chat for anyone. And if anyone's watching, if you guys have a question for the ladies, just drop it in the comments and I will make sure to bring it to their attention. Okay, so let me ask you guys this from a clinical perspective. How do you think, and I know we kind of talked about it from a cultural perspective, which does include the upbringing, but how do you think your upbringing affects your love language?
Ooh, that's a good one. Love it.
Mhm. Yeah. Do you want to go first, Kiki? Or
Okay, yes. Like I spoke before, my mother's love language is receiving gifts. And I thought that's how you showed your love. And I remember one Christmas I had a lot of gifts, and I felt disappointed a little bit. I know that sounds crazy. Yes, I felt disappointed. I got a lot of gifts because I kind of wanted to do something. I wanted something done for me, like something like that. I don't know. I felt discombobulated that Christmas, and my dad's asking was, I said, well, I would prefer if you came outside and helped me with my, my math homework. My dad, I sucked in math, so him helping me with my math, the act of service, giving his expertise, that meant more to me than any gift could have ever meant. So that's when I started to see myself that I'm not the way I see things in my family is not the way that I want to raise my kids and what I want for myself. So I kind of backed away from gifts. My dad asked, "What do you want?" Just go to movies. Go to movies, meal. Just sit here. Just have dinner with me. Those kind of things, or cook me your special popcorn. You know the old fashioned popcorn over the stove. You know what I'm talking about? The old school popcorn and my
Shake,
dad's
shake.
oatmeal. Yeah, that's what I wanted. That's what I love. Those are my all the trips, all the gifts I received over the years. They kind of I forgot it. Let's mention to me again. I remember the popcorn, him opening my milk carton because I hate those little things you open. I always struggle with those when I was little. Just those things, let him know he knows that I needed him for that. So those are the things mean more to me. So that really changed. I started to know myself, and that's how I've kind of led my life. In fact, as I'm talking about it, I'm just, that kind of brought another revelation to me that I've always liked acts of service. But I just always thought that it was that receiving gifts was how a man showed his love for a woman. So that kind of changed my perspective.
Yeah, and that shows just how your upbringing played a role in your love
Mm-hmm.
language.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It it made you think that this is how love should be displayed in your
Mm-hmm.
upbringing, only to realize later, actually, this isn't even how I receive love. This isn't
Right.
actually accurate for me.
Right. Exactly.
Um, from a clinical perspective, I think your upbringing, your childhood plays a large role on attachment. And I know we're not here to talk about attachment theory,
That's
but I
part
think
of it.
next slide.
Okay.
um, but I think that's what we're looking at when we talk upbringing and
Yes.
childhood. We're looking at how we form an attachment to people, um, and how we learn. It's a learned behavior. Attachment is so when you're going in search of that as an adult for love, you might be thinking that your love language is one thing, kind of like Kiki was mentioning, but really it's something different. Or because of your how you attach to others, you're not even able to receive the love, even if it's given to you in your love language. You might feel like, nah, I'm good. I'm figuring my emotional needs on my own because I'm an avoidant attachment, and therefore I don't need anybody.
Preach.
Even though you're like, and I think that also causes issues in relationships, right? Because maybe partner one is like, well, you said partner two that you like physical touch, and I'm trying to reach and touch your hand because you're crying and you're shooing me away, or you're running away from the relationship, or you're withdrawing, right? You're doing all these things because they can't even receive the love that's being given to them.
You're right. And back then, if I want to bring up another point you said about how I was raised, but I was married. This is my second marriage, the one I married to for 17 years. My first marriage, he was all about gift giving, but it was so hollow and empty because that's not really what I wanted. So I thought that that's how a man's supposed to treat a woman, by giving her gifts. So I married a man who was superficial. He thought that if he bought me this, that excused any kind of behavior that he did. So yes, that made me have my first marriage be totally wrong for me because I was trying to model what I saw, not who I was.
Good points, ladies. So even if we know like our partner or our coworker or our child, like we're going to have different love languages, how can understanding the other person's love language help in misunderstandings or like resolving conflicts or issues that do arise in the marriage, like arguments that will arise in the marriage or another relationship?
I think this might depend on the argument, because like I said, this is a tool, not the whole toolbox. But if we're talking like the argument came up and it's revolving around you don't appreciate me, or I try to teach my clients, as we all do, I feel unappreciated. Um, is the statement, hopefully, I feel unappreciated in this relationship, right? And that's the
Mm-hmm.
argument. And that person says, you didn't do the dishes and you knew I was busy this week and you left the dishes just pile up.
Right.
I feel unappreciated. Um, then partner two knows, okay, yeah, you're right. I didn't do the dishes this week and I was just trying to give you hugs and I was trying to have lovey dovey adult time with you all week.
Mm-hmm.
And now I understand why you didn't want to have that physical intimacy with me because your love tank, which is what he used in the book, hasn't been filled either. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully we can kind of get back to that point. And just really trying to encourage marital partners, asking yourself, how am I showing up as a partner? So not just saying I feel unappreciated because you didn't do da da da, but how am I showing up as a partner? Because in that example, we see both partners didn't do what the other partner needed to feel loved either. The partner that didn't, the dishes didn't get
Mm-hmm.
done, but also the partner that didn't receive any physical form of intimacy. So also asking yourself, wait a minute, am I showing up the way my partner needs me to fulfill their love language just as well as my love language being
That's a good statement, John C. Because I was thinking about the same thing. That little disagreements my husband did and I did have, and it's because basically I ignored his love language. It would go a week by without me touching his hand or just cuddling him, and then you start to feel that I wouldn't say resentment, but that like I'm being what you say, I feel unappreciated, right? So definitely, I totally see that, and I've tried to work harder on that because it's so easy to get wrapped up in your love language or what you want and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes neglecting your partner as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
met.
Because you're in that fight mode, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm gonna
I have,
fight and I'm gonna get them right.
yep.
Yep.
Ladies, we do have a question from a colleague, so I'll put it up in here. As a therapist, how do you guys encourage clients to use this tool when they are resistant to love languages?
This is
I,
a
I
great
have a
I.e.,
I
if you have a partner who may come in and say, "Oh, I don't want to take this test," "Oh, that probably can't apply to me," just shows
hmm.
resistance from the beginning.
I think from oh well, go ahead, Kiki.
No,
I'm
I was
sorry.
thinking. No, go. I'm thinking.
Oh,
Okay.
I think for any tool in our toolbox as clinicians, one of
Love
my
you.
favorite tools might be motivational interviewing for this reason. When a client is resistant to something, then it's looking at your motivation, looking at your internal why, what looking at reasons why are they so resistant, because we also don't want to do more harm than good. So if they're not ready to make the change, maybe they're not ready to look at the love languages or their partner, they're either their own or their partners, or it might be that the love languages in the past was something that was done in a harmful way to them, either in a clinical setting or non-clinical setting, and so that might be
Mhm.
bringing up issues for them that they haven't addressed as well. So really looking at either their motivation for it or looking at what's going on with that resistance, what's behind that, and kind of looking at that why are they hesitant to do it.
Nice.
Mhm. You put that in perspective when you use MI. That was really good because we were talking about that in class the other day about not being confrontational towards your with your clients and just saying basically, okay, you're not ready yet because you don't know what kind of hidden trauma they may have experienced with that. So yeah, so I haven't had a resistant one yet, but that's something for me to think about to explore.
Mhm. Have you ever had a client not complete the assessment, or
I
maybe
haven't.
one client, one half of the dyad completed it, but not the other?
I think off the top of my head, I could be mistaken because sometimes I'm really bad. I think the closest I've gotten is maybe someone didn't do it, but it wasn't because they were resistant. It was they forgot or they didn't have time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we did it in session, but I haven't had a client just outright say, I'm not doing that. I refuse, or I think that's
Hmm.
dumb. I don't want to do it. I
Hmm.
haven't had a client
Mhm.
so far.
Same for me as well.
Nice. Okay. Well, let me ask you ladies this. Thank you, Charity, for your question.
Thank you,
Um,
Charity.
as we speak about just some of the gaps or limitations of the love languages, what research would you think would be valuable for better understanding love languages? If you were, doing a study or um, getting your doctorate and focusing on love languages, what do you think would be helpful in advancing or better understanding this tool?
I think one I might have mentioned it earlier in the conversation, but really I would want to, if I felt it on my heart in ministry, to go forth with a doctorate.
All right. All right.
But I would want to look at a study showing the correlation between marital satisfaction and five love languages. So I would want to follow that study and follow those couples at least for a solid year, because I want to look at kind of like what we were saying. When you found this out, did it help your marriage improve initially as you were going along? Did it continue to satisfy your marriage? And then also, did your love languages change between the start of this year and the end of the study? I would want to look at that. So I didn't find, even in my research leading up to this live, I didn't find very many. Um, I won't say zero, but I didn't find very many evidence-based research studies
Mm-hmm.
on five love languages and marital satisfaction. I would also want to look at how five love languages applies to either the kink or poly community as well,
That's what I was thinking. Me too.
and look at that. So
That's very
That's what I
layered,
was
I'm
about to say,
sure.
Jonathan. I would like to do a study, or maybe case studies on that with the LGBT plus community. I would definitely want to see what that would go, because, like you said, I ain't seen any kids that had any books about that, so I would want to do a case study about that to see if there are any differences, so how that's explored and how it's perceived.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
You brought up, so this is a question that I just thought of, but and I'm sorry that it's just like random or kind of
That's all right.
spontaneous. But if you were to add on to the love languages, do you think there's any particular love language that is missing?
oh, that's a good question.
I was thinking about that too. If
I
there was,
don't have I don't have one that I can think of
Mm-hmm.
that I feel like is missing. Um, I just want to encourage people to accept that if they have one, they could also have a secondary one that's important.
More. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I wonder. I think the one that comes to mind for me, and it may not even be. I don't think it's necessarily romantic, but it could apply. Is a social component. So a social
yes,
component
yeah.
that is not just partner, like maybe your sister circle, or whatever other collective that you may be a part of that feeds you as well. You know what I mean? Like I feel there's a social component that um, we tend to forget when we get into a union, because to me the love languages is really just about the pair, and it's not
Yeah,
taking the individual into like the whole context, and how the individual also still needs to be filled up from not just their partner but just in general. You know what I mean? So I wonder, that's where I see research also being helpful. What's the social component out, I don't want to say outside of it, but you know
and I
for
want
you
you
people that
to.
are extroverts and stuff like that.
I was just thinking that too, because luckily me and my husband, both we kind of extroverted. But my first marriage, he
Mm-hmm.
was very extroverted and introvert. So neither one of our needs were being met. He thought I was too
Mm-hmm.
homebody. I thought he was too much of a social butterfly. So that would be a good
Mm-hmm.
aspect to put that in there, so we can, come to some kind of,
Mm-hmm.
you know medium to what we can have, both of us
Mm-hmm.
can feel happy and satisfied in a relationship.
And
Mm-hmm.
what
Because
you
we
said,
talk about it a lot in regards to couples work. We talk
Yeah.
about how, within the diet, they still need to have their individuality. So how does that show up
Hmm.
in the language aspect as well? I'm sorry, Jonathan, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say that well, your point made me think of the cultural context of it too, and that
Mm-hmm.
in other cultures, we're looking at more of a community based culture. So to have that community in
Mm-hmm.
addition to your partner is just as important to be filled up. Um, so I think that would be a good thing to kind of
Mm-hmm.
look at and add.
Yeah.
You should add it to your research study,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah, because like you said, you mentioned before, John said about
Sure.
different
Let me just
cultures.
add that on.
Yeah, and then the Asian community, like you said, they're different. They're more community based. You know, what's good for all, not just the individual. So that'll be some different aspects to consider too when using this.
Mhm.
Do you think there's any certain love languages that are more socially accepted or valued than others? Just from like a from society.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. I think
Yeah.
some are, and there's a lot of stereotypes too that go with them or assumed. Like physical
Mm-hmm.
touch would be assumed that that is a male's number one love
Right.
language, and if
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
fulfill that, then males would be happy. Or receiving gifts should be the females, or words of affirmation would be a
Mm-hmm.
female um, stereotypically accepted love
Mhm.
language. So I've noticed a lot of societal implications in regards to those.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And also
I guess
that
I'll
physical touch, intimacy too.
Hmm.
I've seen that as the
it's
norm.
not just
And
right, exactly.
Hmm.
yeah, and by physical intimacy, sex. That is what I'm saying to y'all grown folks out there. Sex doesn't equal physical intimacy though, and physical intimacy doesn't always equal physical touch.
Exactly.
Right.
Physical touch can
Absolutely.
mean holding somebody's hand or wiping the hair out of their face. There's a lot of other forms of physical touch, like
Mm-hmm.
Kiki said, her husband, just rubbing his head or whatever. That's a form of physical touch for him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Calming that
Yeah.
polyvagal nerve. Absolutely.
Right. And it does. I'm telling you, honey, forgive me, but yeah, when he the nervousness, being nervous. If I just touch him and
Mm-hmm.
rub his head, he said that takes all the anxiety from him just by doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's definitely like you said, a polyvagal.
Yeah. What you got?
Mhm.
What you got, Jonathan? Where'd you pull off your stuff?
Before we go, I wasn't know if we're wrapping up. I don't know, but there's also the five languages of apology
I've
as
never
well.
seen
Mm-hmm.
that.
He has a bunch of different books. Like there's a lot of
It
so
does.
well
I'm
to
gonna
our
get that
point.
one.
There's a lot of versions of his books. There's also like the five love languages
Hmm.
um, for military members, right, in
Hmm.
the military community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's a lot of versions, but this one I think really, just speaking from personal experience, I got it again this around right after I found out about this one, and it really helped our marriage too because we thought we well the other person was like, oh, but I said I apologize. I didn't receive your apology because it's not the way I view
Mm-hmm.
apologies. It's kind of to this book's point is that one
Mm-hmm.
person might say I'm sorry, and the other person might not view the I'm sorry as an apology because they only view apologies as
Mm-hmm.
changed behavior.
Ah, you brought up a good point because I don't know if I remember as a kid when you say I'm sorry when your parents say apology, you say I'm sorry. Oh, that's not you know what I mean. Words are just words. You have to show me that you mean that you're
Mhm.
sorry. So yeah, so I'm gonna get that. Thank you for that. 5 books, 5 love language apology because I'm big on apologies.
Five languages of
Yeah,
apology,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Depending on how you grew up, sometimes like Jonathan was saying, by
Mhm.
apologizing in your mind, you're thinking that you did something wrong instead of actually for apologizing for the other person to make the other person feel seen and
Mhm.
heard. You internalize your
Exactly.
apology, therefore you
Yep.
shut down and don't want to do it. It doesn't come as easy.
Yeah.
Good point.
And so his is just
All right,
saying
so I
everybody
thank
so
you
they
for that, because I do know of the. Go ahead. Sorry, babe.
go ahead. No, it froze. Go ahead.
So I was gonna say, if anyone wants to learn more about the love languages, are there any? tools or technology even that you guys know of that can help them with introducing themselves to the love languages?
Hmm.
I would say the workbook that Kiki
I
told us
know there's
about.
an app.
Yeah,
Mhm.
this app. Okay, I know that. I have the workbooks. I mean, I have several of them. The love. There's several. I have one. The five love languages for last. Was it the secret to love
I
that
know there's an
lasts
app where it's like
and
some.
stuff like that. I'm about to look into that.
Mhm.
I haven't used the app, Leslie. I have used the website, and it's I think literally fivelovelanguages.com.
Mhm.
And if you're wanting to do, if you're watching this, you're like, oh, I want
Mhm.
to do my love language as well. I want to know it. Um, you can go on to the website and take the quiz. It takes maybe like 5 minutes, if
Mhm.
that, and it'll give you your scores very quickly. So the website can be very helpful for people
Yeah,
as well.
that's what I use. I
Mhm.
tell my clients just to Google it, and the quiz will pop up, and it shows you results, and they've sent it to me that way. Mhm.
Oh, that's
But I know they
good.
have audio
I feel
books as
like
well.
the
They
app
have
was like
audio
a,
books.
and I do think if I remember correctly when I used to teach this on base, is they have um like reflection questions that go along with the book. So as you
Mm-hmm.
guys read each chapter together, you can reflect on it, and there's also homework that's assigned with it as well. So you can find the love languages for teens, you can find the love languages for children, you can find the love languages for couples, you can find the love languages for singles, you can find the love languages for men, you can find the
Mm-hmm.
love languages for military. I mean, it's so many different books that um, try to match different intersections on that website. The
Mm-hmm.
app that I was speaking of, I think it's called
What's
Love
that?
Nudge, but
Love
it
notes.
basically, I think you can sign up for the app, and then you got individually, you just put things that you want done that match your love language. So you can automatically like send a ping to your partner saying, "Hey, I need my tank filled a little bit," and they can pick from a list of things that you have put on there.
Oh.
To nudge you a little bit. But I do know that it does start with the assessment as well. So I know when we talk about technology, I think that is one of the things that I thought was really cool to see with the love languages as well.
Oh. Thanks for that resource. I'm gonna look that up too. I didn't know they had
Yeah,
one. I like that.
yeah,
Cool.
it's like
And
love nudge. But
Mhm.
before we go,
that
guys, I'll open up the question. I'll open up the floor to any questions if anybody has any. While I wait, I will say that both Kiki and Jonasi are here at Usawa Wellness Services, and both do see couples. So if you're interested in booking a session, you can give our office a call at 210-951-3479. And ladies, do you guys have any parting nuggets to drop?
Rack. Random acts of kindness.
Got it.
right. Mine would just be, how am I showing up as a partner? How am I
Right.
showing up as a friend? How am I showing up as a worker? How am I showing up as a sister, mom, daughter, brother, cousin, nephew, uncle? Ask
Mm-hmm.
yourself before you point the blame at your other person in that interpersonal relationship. First, ask yourself,
Mm-hmm.
how am I showing up? How did I communicate these feelings? How did I set my boundaries? Explore that part, just as much as you're exploring the other part.
Well said. Yep.
Well, ladies, thank you so much. And
Thank
we
you for
will
inviting us.
catch, no problem. And we'll catch everybody on the next live, which will probably be about attachments. Thank
And
you.
apologies. How about apologies? That's a good one.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Bye. Bye. Bye.